Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Without further ado, let's get into part 2 of the video. Rhaenyra's speech also contained several interesting details. First of all, when she started talking about the prophecy, she actually altered the prophecy. Remember Viserys once said that it was their duty to rule wisely because when the long night came, someone from House Targaryen had to be in power because only they could stand against the Night King. But Rhaenyra changed the prophecy. She said, I am the chosen one. I am the prince that was promised. And then it gets even more interesting. When she reached that part of her speech, she suddenly switched languages and started speaking High Valyrian, the language spoken by the Targaryens. That means no one standing there actually understood what Rhaenyra was saying. Even the people close to her didn't necessarily understand it. Even Joffrey, who was standing beside her, didn't know High Valyrian. But why did she switch languages? Because in High Valyrian, the word for prince doesn't have a specific gender. The same word can refer to either a male or a female. Rhaenyra didn't want to use the words prince or princess because she didn't want to give the prophecy a specific gender. So she deliberately switched languages to make sure that she could still be the person described in the prophecy. We've also seen Rhaenyra struggle with her identity as a woman several times before. She has said things like, I have the body of a woman, but the heart of a king. She has also spoken about feeling physically weak. Here, she seems to be hiding that sense of weakness behind her choice to change languages. During her speech, she also gave another piece of inaccurate information. She claimed that her family was the only family to survive the destruction of Valyria. But the Velaryons, who were standing beside her, also came from Valyria. They were one of the few families with the ability to ride dragons who survived the doom. Once again, Rhaenyra seems to have changed the story to make it sound as though her family's survival was proof that the gods had chosen them. And there was another interesting thing she did. If you remember when Criston Cole was about to be killed, he raised his hand and shouted, "We light the way!" That's the motto of House Hightower. Every major family has its own words. The Starks say, "Winter is coming," while the Hightowers say, "We light the way." And at the end of her speech, Rhaenyra shouted that she was the one who lights the way. In other words, she took the words of her enemies and used them in her own speech. Even when Helaena warned her that she was becoming a bad person, Rhaenyra refused to listen. Even when she saw the blood crown that Helaena had woven, she pushed it aside and didn't give it much importance. The creators of the series have said that Rhaenyra has paid an enormous price to reach this point. The sacrifices and losses have become so heavy that she can no longer turn back. If she turned back now, it would mean that the deaths of her two sons were ultimately meaningless. Another point is that High Septon believed that Rhaenyra would learn from history and wouldn't kill him. And as we saw before, Rhaenyra was genuinely afraid of confronting him, but now she had no other choice because Aegon was still alive. Aegon was the person the Faith of the Seven recognized and followed. That meant Rhaenyra would eventually have to go to war with the Faith as well. Rhaenyra came there intending to legitimize her rule, but instead, she effectively ordered a murder in a place considered sacred, a sanctuary where weapons were not even supposed to be allowed. So instead of gaining legitimacy, she has now committed blasphemy, murder, and a violation of sacred ground. And that could mean that in the next season, Rhaenyra may have to fight not only her political enemies, but also the Faith of the Seven. Now, what happens after Rhaenyra and Mysaria separate? We saw that Mysaria took advantage of the chaos that Rhaenyra herself had created and escaped. The guards will most likely remain in the capital. After all, Rhaenyra has now become the kind of ruler that people like Mysaria have always suffered under. Because of this, Mysaria will probably turn against Rhaenyra, not necessarily by joining the Greens, but by remaining in the capital and influencing the balance of power from the shadows. Larys Strong was absent from this episode, but as we remember, Larys had Otto imprisoned and was essentially keeping him as a potential gift for Rhaenyra. His plan was to have Otto available in case the capital fell to the Blacks, so that he could eventually join their side. He will most likely return to the capital and come into Rhaenyra's orbit, potentially taking Mysaria's place and helping complete Rhaenyra's downfall. It's also possible that Larys and Mysaria will eventually come into conflict, just as they were constantly at odds during the first season. And this brings us back to the design Helena had woven. Rhaenyra is slowly becoming exactly what that vision depicted. In Helena's design, the dragons behind Rhaenyra were being torn apart. Some of them were literally burning in flames, and you could even see the leg of one of the dragons lying separately. But even more importantly, blood was flowing from Rhaenyra's crown, running down across her entire body. And if you remember the opening credits, whenever something happened in one episode, we would often see that event represented in the following episode through Helena's woven tapestry. For example, in today's opening credits, we saw that Aegon's return had been added to the tapestry. So, in a way, Helena was weaving history itself, and now that she has depicted the queen in this way, she may be foreshadowing the bloody wars that are still to come. The burning dragons we saw in Helena's tapestry may have been showing us the ultimate consequences of Rhaenyra's war.